Hello listeners and welcome back. Today we are going to be discussing the movie Sleepover. The movie was released in 2004 and stars Alexa Vengar, Brie Larson, Steve Carell, Sarah Paxton, Sean Ferris, Evan Peters, Jane Lynch, and Jeff Garlin. It is about a group of teen girls that have you guessed it, sleepover and end up embarking on a scavenger hunt against the popular girls. So the movie essentially starts at the last day of school and the beginning of summer vacation. Our protagonists last summer before starting high school. They get stopped on their way out of school by one of the teachers giving them a summer reading list, which doesn't even make sense anyway if they are graduating, but it's important to mention him as he comes up later. Our main protagonist, Julie, gets stopped in the hallway by one of her friends informing her that Liz, one of the popular girls, is also having a sleepover the same night, and that Stacy, one of the friends Julie wanted to invite, is going to go to her sleepover instead. Stacy and Liz are our resident mean girls of the movie that we meet next, when they proceed to make a fat joke about one of the other girls in the class, Yancey, that Julie then invites to the sleepover. Next, we're introduced to this skater guy and his friends that they call SpongeBob. In the cast, it lists him as Russell, so I don't know. But there's not much about him. He basically just follows them around the whole movie and has a whole obsession with this thing that he was in a coma for 3 hours. We follow Jules and Hannah as they reminisce about their old days in school. They talk about how her best friend now, Hannah, is leaving midway through the summer and is going to have to start high school without her. This is where they actually come across the high school in their walk, and we are introduced to 2 different seating arrangements, one being the dumpster, which is where the nobodies and nerds hang out, and the fountain, which is where the cool popular kids hang out. This is where Julie starts reminiscing about how she will always be a dumpster person and never a fountain person. And whilst all this is happening, we are introduced to Julie's crush that skateboards over the fountain, while Julie continues to talk about why he does not notice her. And I mean, like, why would he? They go to different schools, like he's in high school and she's just graduated, like, and it's like they may not have gone to the same school like for like 2 years. Why would he notice her? When Julie gets home, her mom is excited and ready to show her all the new ladybug decorations she bought for the sleepover tonight. Julie, feeling like she is too old for this, gets upset. This is where we're also introduced to her brother Ren, that is back from college and living at home. Due to Julie's outburst, her mum threatens to stay home instead of going out and reminds her of all the rules when having the sleepover. If she does not abide by these rules, she will have to stay home when the rest of the family goes on their trip to Hawaii. Julie's going through a bit of an identity issue with her mum throughout the movie, where she feels like she wants to grow up and be mature, and her mum is still treating her like a kid. Later that night, the girls get ready for the party as they make fried Twinkies. The dad's staying home to fix the water system, and the mum is going out with her friends for the night. When the girls arrive for the sleepover, we are shown a mini montage of fun activities they do, such as listening to music, dressing up, and makeup. They also show a frozen bra scene, which they reference later as some sort of like sleepover requirement, which I have never heard of before, so comment below if you know what that's about, and also comment your favorite sleepover activities. Next we're shown Stacy, which is one of the main popular girls that Jules wanted to invite to her sleepover. She didn't go as she is going to the high school dance with her high school boyfriend. We see where this guy Todd comes to pick her up, but instead of taking her to the dance, he takes her to the park instead, where he wants to hook up. When she refuses, he gets mad and kicks her out. She has to think of a plan B, so she calls up her friend Liz, who's also having a sleepover, and asks her to start making a list. But like, that's actually how she does it. She just calls up her friend and is like, "Hey Liz, start making a list," and just hangs up. And it's like, if your friend were to do that to you in real life, you'd immediately call back and be like, "What the fuck? What list? What the hell are you talking about? Why did you just hang up on me?" Anyway, back at Julie's place, their fun is interrupted by a knock at the door that reveals a security patrol tech officer there to warn them about a noise complaint. This patrol officer is played by Steve Carell, and it's basically like they told him just be this really weird yet naive security officer, and he used his creativity and comedy to do just that, as he creates roadblocks and complications for the girls along their journey. Once the cop leaves, there is another knock at the door, but this time it is Stacy. She proceeds to make herself at home and uses Jules' computer to FaceTime the other girls about the scavenger list. The lists on the scavenger hunt include dressing up a mannequin in your own clothes, getting a guy to buy you a drink at a club, getting the sticker of a patrol tech car, and stealing a pair of boxer shorts from Julie's crush Steve. The girls must document all tasks with the Polaroid camera, and winners of the scavenger hunt get to sit at the fountain next year, whereas the losers sit at the dumpsters. Jules wants to do it, but is skeptical as she knows she cannot leave the house as her mom will cancel the trip to Hawaii. This is where her brother comes in. She offers her brother money in exchange for him helping them sneak out, and so that their parents never find out that she left the house. So Stacy sets Jules up with an online dating profile on an on a website that is police approved in order for them to complete one of the tasks on their scavenger hunt, where they need to get into a club and get a guy to order them a drink. They continue to set Jules up with a fake profile, answering questions such as her name, what she looks like, and hobbies. I love when it gets to hobbies, Jules is just like eating cheese, and everyone just stares at her as if it's like weird. But honestly though, like if eating cheese isn't one of your hobbies, I can guarantee you're doing something wrong. They get a match from a guy named Dave that is approved by the site and is going to be wearing a brown jacket with a red tie. Stacy leaves to be on the other girls' team, and Jules has a mini makeover for her date as June, the swimsuit model. The girls have their first scare when they almost get caught by Jules' dad as they try and sneak out of the house. Now the girls we're following need a car in order to do a lot of the activities on the scavenger hunt, but due to their age, they're not able to drive yet. The mean girls get a head start in this as Liz, the leader of their group, was held back a year and already has her learner's permit, meaning she's able to drive her team around, which kind of makes sense, but not really, because on a learner's permit, you still have to have your parents in the car. You can't just be driving around with you and your friends. The other girls, however, are only 14, 15 and don't have their learner's permits yet, meaning that they do not have a car and a way to get around. That is until Yancy offers her assistance. They go to her place and she shows them a small electric car that her dad taught her to drive in case of an emergency. So they use it. Just as the girls take off on their adventure, the skater boy from earlier, SpongeBob, ends up breaking into Julie's house and climbing through the window. They accidentally climb into the brother's bedroom instead of hers. The brother proceeds to show them to Julie's room, which is a little bit weird. I mean, if 3 guys are crawling through your window at night looking for your sister, I don't know why you would instantly just act totally natural and show them to her room and let them look through all that stuff. But anyway, this is where I should also mention they get the second scare of the night, whereas I think one of the boys knocks over and breaks something, causing the dad to come up and check on the girl. And when he does, all of the boys are dressed up and pretending to sing along to the song in order to convince the dad that they are the girls. It works and he leaves, and the boys take off in order to track down the girls on their scavenger hunt. Now with the girl group we follow, they each have their own arc. So we have Farah, which is the optimistic, fun sort of friend that's always willing to look at the bright side of things and keep everyone together. And then you have Yancy, which is the quiet, fat girl that spends 90% of the movie downing herself about her weight, who she is, and boys. Jules is very self-doubting, as she always has high ambitions of having the perfect high school career, yet at the same time telling herself that she's never good enough or not worth it, or it's just never going to happen. Then there's Hannah, the wise best friend, always offering comfort and wisdom. These stereotypes for the characters are used and represented multiple times throughout the film. I remember when I was watching a lot of reviews, a lot of people got very unhappy with the scene where Hannah tells Yancy that she should just date guys who eat brownies, as everyone was interpreting that, oh, she's a fat girl, which means she can only date fat guys. I just remember being really confused because even when watching it as a kid, I never interpreted it that way. I always took it as Hannah saying, like, not to change herself for anyone else. If she likes eating brownies, then just date other people that also like the same thing, meaning that you don't change yourself for anyone else, or you don't feel bad about yourself because of someone else. You just surround yourself with people that enjoy the same things you do. That's how I always took it. I always took it as more of like a, screw what everyone else thinks, just do you and the right person will find you. Whereas all the reviews I've seen, everyone seems to interpret it as, oh, they're saying just because she's fat, she has to only date someone who's fat. And I just never took it that way before. Now, the first job on the list was to dress up a mannequin in your own clothes. The mean girls already got a head start on this and are leaving just as the other group is coming in. The mean girls ended up locking the door to their mannequins, causing the girls to find other ones. The only ones they find, however, are guy mannequins, causing this more difficult, making this a more difficult challenge as they're trying to squeeze women's clothing onto a guy's body, which is obviously going to be awkward and hard. Things are made out worse as the security patrol tech from earlier is also at the mall and spins around every time he sees movement in the window, causing the girls to freeze and unfreeze like mannequins every time he turns to look, as if it's not totally obvious that they're people and not mannequins. But the girls complete the task and just barely get the mannequins into their clothing in enough time to take a picture and get out of there before they get caught by the security patrol officer. Meanwhile, the pizzas that they ordered from earlier arrive, and Julie has to convince her brother to eat them all in order to set the illusion that the girls never left. He agrees in exchange for Julie doing his laundry for a month because it is such a hassle stuffing your face with pizza. Next on the scavenger hunt is getting a drink from the club. Just as the girls turn up at the club, they see that the mean girls are just getting let in. They try to get in with them, but their attempt fails. Whilst they are there, SpongeBob and his friends also turn up. The girls end up finding another way, and Jules and Hannah sneak into the club. Just as they get in, they spot the other girls at a table with a bunch of guys taking the photo. Jules needing to find her own date, they quickly start looking around when they spot one of Mr. Corrado, the old teacher from the beginning of the movie. And just as they start to laugh about how funny it is that a teacher would go clubbing, they realize that he is none other than Dave, their online date. They debate on whether or not to bail, but just as they do, he spots them. She puts on sunglasses as a disguise in a nightclub so that the teacher won't notice that it's her. Jules tries to play along as June, the swimsuit model, but it doesn't take long for the teacher to recognize her and starts understandably freaking out and questioning why these underage girls are at a nightclub trying to have a date with him. They explain to him that they're on a scavenger hunt for a lunch spot, and him, remembering the glory days of being a teenager, agrees to help them out and take a picture with them. In exchange, they get him a proper date for the night. While the girls are inside, Yancy is out the back waiting, where she ends up meeting someone, the speaker moving guy. No, I'm just kidding. His name's Peter. Peter starts a conversation with Yancy because he thinks she is cute, and he starts talking to her about his job and just making conversation. Yancy finds this confusing as guys never really talk to her unless they're wanting something. I also get a little bit annoyed at Yancy at the end of this scene as after the guy left, Sphera comes back and asks what she's all happy about, and she explains that she had a really nice conversation with a cute guy. Sphera then asks where he went, and Yancy goes on saying that he left and this is the worst moment in my life and I'm never going to see him again, and kind of goes into a little self-pity rant. And it's just like, sure, maybe the chances of you running into this guy again is slim and may not happen, but you had a nice conversation, you met a nice guy, just enjoy it. Why do you need to talk down on yourself and make it an ugly experience rather than a nice experience? It just annoys me how she kind of got all self-pity after that scene, even though he was nothing but kind to her the entire time. Yet she was still looking at it as a negative experience. It's like, what do you want? Stacy and Liz pass the girls outside the club and have a laugh about how their team is inside having drinks with the teacher. And it's like, I thought that the website was police approved, but not approved enough to not get catfished, apparently. And I don't think Stacey really has the right to laugh about the fact that they're having drinks with the teacher, because she set up the date. She signed Julie up to the website, made up the name, made up the fake profile and everything. It could have just as easily happened to them if they went through a fake dating site as well. Yet they're laughing at it as if Jewel and Hannah went in there and purposely saw the teacher and talked him up. It's like, no, honey, you actually set up this date for her. Like, the roles could have easily been reversed. Meanwhile, back in the club, when Julie and Hannah are trying to leave, Julie spots someone on the dance floor, and that someone is none other than her mom. Jules then proceeds to have a mini breakdown about how her mom can't be at a club. She's a mom. Moms don't go clubbing. Does the dad know about this? What is she doing? Things only get worse as they try to leave the club. Julie's mom sees them from a distance. Not sure whether it's them or not, she knows she needs to call home in order to ensure Julie is where she says she is. Things go from bad to worse as when they get outside the club, they realize that their car has been boxed in. Luckily, SpongeBob and his friends save the day, as Julie knows how to ride a skateboard and tries to race it to her house in time to make the call with her mom. This is where we get to see Julie's skateboarding skills as she races home to make the phone call. At one point, she skates across the road, and who stops there? None other than Steve. This is where he sees her and overall starstruck and must know who this mysterious girl in the red dress is. So yeah, like I said, we all had that fantasy at one point or another of that crush that we hoped would finally notice us. And it's the beginning of this epic once-in-a-lifetime relationship. But unlike in the movie, this fantasy only ever stays in our head. Comment below if something like this did actually happen to you, if you had a crush from afar and they did spontaneously notice you and pursue you out of nowhere, and it did become like your fantasy come to life. Julie has a few scares but makes it home in time, partly also from the help of her dad. Now her dad, the entire movie, is trying to install some new water system and he's having trouble with it the whole night. And just as the phone rings, the tap ends up going off and spraying everywhere and roof and causing a hole, and it's a little bit frustrating because you're watching him trying to cover it up and you're just like, bro, just turn off the tap. And that delays him picking up the phone, which then causes more time for Julie to get home and get up into her bedroom. Julie makes it just in time with only a few mishaps and is able to answer the phone to her mum and set the illusion that they have been there the entire time. Once she has finished talking to her mum and is covered, her and Ren, her brother, exchange a few words on how exhausting the night has been. Julie thanks him for all his help, but asks him if he can stay on just a little longer, as she only has a few more tasks to complete. Next up, they have Steve's house, and the fact that they all seem to know where he lives is just a little weird to start with, but Julie's supposed to go in alone as the car runs out of power, and the fact that the only reason this is on the list is because of her, so the girls make her go in alone whilst they stay outside and try and get power for the car. Now at the same time, Julie and her friends arrive. The mean girls are also at Steve. They have decided to go to his car and look in his gym bag to find his boxes, whereas Julie decides to climb the wall into his house, and they see this. This is where the patrol tech officer comes in again, but we'll get to that later, as first we need to follow Julie. Steve and his friend get back just as Julie arrives in the house and causes her to run into the closest room. That happens to be none other than the bathroom, and of course, who's getting ready for the dance? Steve. So he comes into the bathroom, causing Julie to then hide in the shower. But before that, Steve was actually talking about Julie trying to look for her in the yearbook because he wants to figure out who the girl is in the red dress. He finds her and he figures out who she is, but yeah, I just think it's a little bit weird that, considering he's supposed to be like super popular, and even his friends like, bro, you have a whole gym full of girls waiting for you, why are you fixated on this like one chick? And you'd think that he'd have, I don't know, some friends of girls at school or a girlfriend even already, instead of being fixated on this like chick that he's seen one time that he's never even spoken to. But anyway, he goes to take a shower and Julie has nowhere else to hide but in the shower, and we get this whole uncomfortable sort of scene where she watches him get undressed, and it's just a little bit uncomfortable and weird for everyone because the idea of having someone watch you undress in your own bathroom not knowing is just an unsettling thought. But before anything too bad happens, there's chaos outside and Steve runs to go and see what happens, giving Julie enough time to grab his boxes and escape without being caught. Now the commotion outside was caused by the girls because meanwhile, as Julie was inside, they were outside trying to find a plug to recharge the car, and the plug that they do find doesn't reach where the car is at, so they try pushing it and it ends up rolling down the road and smashing right into the patrol tech security car, causing a whole thing in itself. By the time the police officer stumbled out of his car, Julie is jumping back over the wall and he spots her. It's a little bit weird that Steve and his friend didn't notice this either, because weren't they just looking out the window at the crash? So they would have seen him stumble out of the car and then head towards the house and spot Julie. Either way, Julie gets caught by the patrol tech officer and is forced to call home. She gets yet another scare when she believes that her father has picked up the phone. When she answers, however, it's her brother. Her brother answers the phone just in time and they have their own little negotiation before Julie hangs up. Now, meanwhile, the other girls were somehow able to get the car away from the crash site and somewhere that it can be charged, which would have been really interesting to see how they moved it. But they do get it charged up and drive past Julie so that she can jump in. Just as they do that, however, Julie remembers that they can complete their last and final task of the night, which is collecting the sticker of a patrol tech security car. Now, because the mean girls thought that they had won from calling the police and thought that Julie was not going to be able to finish the scavenger hunt, they decided to slack off and get juices instead and have to race to the high school when they see the other girls drive past. Both teams arrive at the parking lot just in time and they display their items that each team needed to collect it throughout the scavenger hunt. Both teams have completed all tasks at the same time, so they call for a tiebreaker. The first person to receive the king or queen's crown at the dance wins. Now the girls have to try and find a way in without a ticket. How they do this is Julie makes some speech to the ticket girl and lets them in, which I don't think would fly in the real world, as it is just really mean, actually. What she says to her, she's basically telling her that you're a loser, and if you don't let me in, I'm going to end up like a loser like you. And it's just like probably not the most realistic strategy to use. But for movie purposes, it works, and they get into the dance. Once they get in, they act as if it's the most revolutionary thing they've ever seen. But they take a look around, scope the place out, and Julie ends up seeing Steve dancing with another girl and gets upset, but is quickly distracted when everyone sees Todd kissing another girl. This girl is soon revealed to be his girlfriend, and that Todd had been leading both her and Stacy on. Instead of the girls getting mad at him, however, even though he was the one that was playing them both, they some reason get mad at each other and start going at it. This is sort of the part of the movie where we get to see the popular perfect girl be down at her lowest. She loses the fight, the guy rejects her, and it reveals that she lied about hooking up with him earlier on, revealing that she's not so different from the rest of them. All is not lost for Stacy, as SpongeBob makes another heroic appearance and offers to dance with her in the dance competition that the school is holding, giving Stacy a chance to win back some of her dignity. It's really cute that SpongeBob offers to help, and it's kind of funny that she agrees to dance with him, especially when earlier on in the movie they actually run into each other at the club. Somehow SpongeBob snuck his way in there as well, and he asks her to dance, and she says when hell freezes over. Little did they know later that night they would be dancing together. But Stacy and SpongeBob win the dance competition and get their picture taken together, which SpongeBob replaces with his coma picture, which I think I mentioned earlier in the movie, he was in a coma for 3 hours and is obsessed with showing people this photo, which he now replaces because he thinks the photo with Stacy is better. Now, soon after, Yancy ends up finding out that she actually replaced Stacy at the party, and understandably feels a bit taken back by it. The feeling doesn't last long, though, as the band starts playing a song for her that was requested by the speaker moving guy. I'm just kidding, Peter, the guy she met earlier from the club, as he is there for work and saw her and requested a dance. This understandably lifts her mood, and she gets to enjoy a nice dance with the guy that she never thought that she would see again. Finally, the time arrives that the announcement for King and Queen are held. Now Steve ends up winning the crown for King, and as he asks for Julie. But anyway, he calls her name, she walks out on stage, and they end up having the dance, and he gives her the crown because as everyone was dancing, and when the dance competition was on earlier, he finds the slip of paper that tells him about the scavenger hunt, so he knows what they did and that it was for Julie and that she needed the crown to win, so he gives her the crown. And they end up winning the scavenger hunt. The mean girls are not happy at all about losing and having to spend a year eating at the dumpsters, whereas the other girls continue to gloat about their win. I feel bad mostly for Hannah because she went through all of this with her friends, and she doesn't even get to reap any of the rewards because she's moving. Julie and Steve leave the dance and have their little heart-to-heart, and as they're just about to kiss, the phone rings with Julie's brother calling to warn her that their mom is on their way home and she needs to leave. Now, Julie sort of takes on Yancy's attitude towards relationships and boys towards the second half of the movie at the dance when she says things like, "Have someone for everyone except me," or he's just gonna wake up and realize I'm just an average little freshman, or I had my Cinderella night yet I'm still the ugly stepsister, just going into this whole self-pity sort of thing. And it's just like, yeah, sure, maybe the night didn't end up exactly the way that you thought, but you achieved way much more than you ever expected to have happened or do, and just reap the rewards instead of just like sulking in everything that goes wrong. But moving on, they end up racing home, and Julie ends up losing her crown just as the patrol officer comes around on a bike and gets completely totaled by it. It's just not his night at all. The girls make it home in time, but need to find another way to get back into the house, so they try and using the old cubby house and do some like Mission Impossible type shit across some rope, which ends up going wrong and causing the floor to fall in, and Julie needs to get from downstairs and sneak past her parents upstairs without them noticing. As she's sneaking past her parents, she overhears that her dad did know that her mum was at the club, which is what she was worried about earlier, thinking that her mum was just doing crazy things without the dad knowing, but it turns out he knew the whole time, which eases her thoughts. The girls rush to make it appear that they have been sleeping the whole time when they hear the parents coming to check up on them. The girls get woken up bright and early the next morning, feeling very exhausted and tired as they barely got any sleep last night from the crazy adventures they went on, which is a part that we can all definitely relate to. Comment below when you remember feeling so tired the next morning after a sleepover because you spent all night awake. The next morning, once the girls are up and ready, Julie gets confronted by her mom. Julie ends up telling her that they did end up leaving the house last night, and they end up talking out their differences. Julie understanding that she doesn't need to grow up so fast, and her mum understanding that she will eventually need to grow up. The girls are ready to get picked up, and Yancy ends up leaving with Farah, which makes no sense because what happened to the tiny wing car that they were driving around in all night? Did they just put it back just for her to get a lift home the next morning? And lastly, to get picked up is Hannah, yet her goodbye is a little bit more emotional as she is moving, and it's sort of like one of their last official goodbyes, which is very relatable to most of us, even just coming in to high school. A lot of us saying goodbye to our primary school friends because you're all going to different high schools, or even just in general growing up and losing touch with the scene really speaks to that and really represents that change and that moving forward. So they have a nice goodbye, and Julie goes back into the house thinking that it's all over. Or so she thinks, until she sees a reflection coming from the window that turns out to be the crown she lost the night before. When she goes out to investigate, Steve reveals himself and she finally gets her kiss. But to officially wrap out the end of the movie, they show us a little bit of Stacy and her gang eating by the dumpsters. And it goes pretty much just as you would imagine. And that is it. That is how our movie ends. Overall, it's pretty good. Of course, it's very cheesy and very cringy at times, but it is not trying to be anything serious. It's just trying to be a fun teen adventure movie, squished with all the classic high school Hollywood cliches into it. So it really does its job, and it's just a fun time, which is all it's trying to be. So overall, I reckon it's not too bad and would still recommend if you're looking for a fun teen rom-com. That is all for this episode. As always, everything we discussed will be linked below along with my socials. Please be sure to like, subscribe and follow. Feel free to leave all your thoughts and comments below. Thanks for listening.